fall 2023, we launched the country's first ever graduate level certificate program in JEDI and JSSJ. That's JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, and Jewish Studies and Social Justice. This graduate level program gives professionals the opportunity to learn from both scholars and activists, offering a blend of academic study and real-world application. In the classroom, we offer a wide range of significant Jewish studies courses not found in other educational settings. Beyond the classroom, we offer unique events that are free and open to the public, such as tonight's event. Through the SWIG JSSJ program, we believe that education is the best long-term way to create systemic change. Whether one has the time to take a semester-long course or a few hours to hear from a single speaker, education is fundamental to making our world better, paramount in shining the spotlight on the margins, on oppressed communities who are mistreated merely because of their race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, or any other social identity. Following the other two JSSJ events we have remaining in the semester, the third event in our three-part series on anti-Semitism will be held on Tuesday, April 16th in Fromm Hall, and it's titled Anti-Zionism and Anti-Semitism, Compassion and Disagreement in a Time of Violence. The keynote speaker will be Leo Ferguson, a longtime social justice activist from New York City that works for JFREJ, that's Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, as a movement-building organizer. We will also, following his keynote, Leo will be in conversation with Rabbi Dev Norley, Senior Rabbi of Kehillah Community Synagogue in the East Bay, moderated by JSSJ's own Dr. Oren Kroll-Zeldin. Then on Thursday, April 25th, we'll have our 14th annual Social Justice Passover Seder, which will focus on anti-racism. Both events will be held from 6:30 to 8. If you want to learn more about it, please sign up on the sign-up sheet outside on the table. Now, let me introduce Rabbi Camille Shira Angel, which is my pleasure. Met in 2008, I was teaching a new course at the university called Social Justice, Activism, and Jews. And one of the many topics we were going to encounter and learn about was gender and sexual orientation, various social identities that bump up against the queer world in multiple ways. And I reached out to, you had an assistant at that time, I know that was a short period, you had an assistant. But she needed an assistant all the time. But she had an assistant, I reached out, you came to class. No, she needed an assistant because she's doing amazing work and can't be in 50 places at once. Anyway, she made a face. She came every year, every fall from 2008 onward, and we developed a friendship. And after she spent 15 years as the rabbi at the queer flagship synagogue here in Northern California, Congregation Shar Zahav, we put our heads together, and in 2017, she started teaching here at the University of San Francisco. So she's been on faculty here for 7 years. We kept putting our heads together, and in 2019, in addition to being faculty member, she joined as campus rabbi in residence. Since that time, she's been teaching. Since 2017, she's been teaching two of the, I would say, the university's most powerful and transformative courses, one called Queering Religion, the other called Honoring Our LGBTQIA+ Elders. It's had different names, it's still that, yeah. And many of the elders are here today. She does remarkable things. She with Pam David and Robert Holgate, who you'll also learn a bit more about shortly, they put their heads together and put together this event, the third annual Baum Memorial. She also runs the Social Justice Seder. She runs Open Doors Sukkot. She runs Beyond BBB. She runs more things than I have time to talk about. And I can tell you, I've been here 17 years, and I've been working with Camille. She and Oren are my full-time partners, and I can't imagine being on this campus, being engaged in education and social justice without her as my partner. She's extraordinary. And I can tell you, all of us know as individuals, it can be tough to work in places sometimes where sometimes you think that other people aren't giving you enough acknowledgement, right? We all know that as people in this broken world that we're trying to transform. And Camille moves onward. And the number of events and activities and things that she does on campus tonight is really the tip of the iceberg. People just don't even know. And I have a list somewhere on my laptop. Anyway, she's extraordinary. I only get to introduce her once a year. So please join me in welcoming Rabbi Kamir Shira Angel to the dais.
This lecture series and so much of my Queering Religion ministry is made possible by Robert Holgate, Pam David, and many of you here with us tonight. A special shout out to the director of the SWIG program in JSSJ, my colleague and my teacher, Aaron Hontapper. It's a Jewish custom that at the anniversary of a dear one's death, you study something relevant to that person. We began this memorial lecture 3 years ago as a communal way to observe the anniversary of Al's death, his yahrzeit, by learning about what was important to him in life. Al was a warm-hearted, gifted, and a devoted community leader. Well-educated with several degrees, Al had careers as a lawyer, an urban planner, a social worker. I'm wearing his social work intern badge tonight. And a therapist. He was instrumental in founding the New Israel Fund, the Gay and Lesbian Task Force of the Jewish Community Federation of San Francisco, and he served on countless boards and committees, including the American Civil Liberties Union and the Lambda Legal Defense Education Fund. In 2013, he was honored as the Lifetime Achievement Grand Marshal of the 43rd Annual San Francisco Pride Parade. Not only did he do good deeds in abundance, but Al also motivated others to follow suit. Al became my friend over 20 years ago when I moved to San Francisco to become the spiritual leader of the historically gay and lesbian, transgender, and bi synagogue. Al wanted to meet the new rabbi, to get to know me, and to also gently let me know I wouldn't be seeing him in temple too much, but that I could call on him whenever I needed. I got to know Al at the height of his joy as he and Robert prepared for their wedding, and I also had the sacred privilege of helping Al reach his final days on this earth. The many community members who are joining us this evening in person and by live stream are here because of their abiding affection for Al. May Al's memory be a blessing and an inspiration for you who are meeting him for the first time now in what might be called his afterlife. Roll the film, please.
So I come from an educated family. They knew a lot and they read, and they were financially comfortable. Honesty was valued, education was valued, hard work was valued. My father wanted both my brother and I to take over the business, but we didn't do it. He knew that we had the brain power to do it. He was what they called then an investment counselor, but it was a very white-collar job, very socially acceptable job. My brother had no interest in doing it, and I had no interest in doing it. I always resisted being pigeonholed. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a Harvard man. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a brain with a capital B. I didn't like to be pigeonholed as a Jew. So I spent 5 years as a lawyer and 20 plus years as a city planner and 20 plus years as a therapist. For the last 10 years or so, I haven't worked in the traditional sense. A major component of my life is the philanthropy. The common wisdom is that gay men become invisible at age fill in the blank. Some people say 50, some people say 60, whatever. I'm not invisible even now at my advanced age. Why? Because I can do things for people, and I'm quite happy with that. I was very closeted and very retrograde, or whatever the right word is, until 1975. Those were often lonely years. I wanted a relationship, always wanted a relationship. So how did I meet Robert? I decided I was going to move to an elevator building. So I sent out an email to everyone I knew, so to speak, and said, can you recommend a designer to work with me when I move? And the second one I interviewed was Robert. And the way I like to tell the tale was that after 5 minutes, I decided I wanted to work with him. And after 5 weeks, I realized I was in love with him. And after 5 months, he finally succumbed to my entreaties. It hasn't been an easy road for the two of us. We live separately. We go on these trips, long trips. We're together 24 hours a day for weeks. It's fine. We got legally married. But we have a little shrine over there. We have the invitation. We have the glass that we drank wine out of. And we have a thing that the Buddhists use to put good wishes in. We had people write good wishes for us, and we put them all in there, and they're still there to look at whenever we look at them. And then there's a Japanese drum that we brought back from Japan that was played during the wedding. We had a wonderful time. It was so much fun.
This evening, for the first time, I have the delightful opportunity to lift up and recognize Robert Holgate with the establishment of the Robert Holgate Pride Award, which is a new fellowship to highlight student activism in queering religion at the University of San Francisco. This award, named in honor of the LGBTQIA+ activist and philanthropist Robert Holgate, will enable the Queering Religion Ministry to create more inclusive programs and build spiritual communities. Robert Holgate is a longtime gay activist and philanthropist in San Francisco. In honor of his late husband, Robert sponsored the 2022 launch of this memorial lecture and also supports the Rabbi in Residence program to honor our work together. Robert's philanthropy is primarily focused on organizations supporting queer young people and elders, civil rights, and strengthening our democracy and related cultural work. The Robert Holgate Pride Award is being hosted by the SWIG program in Jewish Studies and Social Justice. I'd like to ask our selection committee to stand. They include Pam David, Steve Shimmons, Mike Shriver, Ella Quinn, and Dorothy Ehrlich. And to announce the award winners, please join me in welcoming Robert Holgate.
Wow. The video really captured so much of our relationship. Mason Funk with Outwards put the video together. I just want to give a shout out to Mason because what he's doing is significant for us in our community. He's recording our history. He recorded Al, he recorded his history so that I had it because Al got sick during COVID. All of our interactions with people were online. He died during COVID. We had his memorial service during COVID. And it would not have been the same if Mason hadn't come and spent 3 hours interviewing Al. It made a huge difference, and I value what was recorded and what we have of Al's history. So I hope you'll all take the time to look up Outwards and support them, because it's super significant right now. We don't want to lose our elders' history. So thank you, Mason. And you made me cry. Okay, so I'll get to the business at hand. I also want to say how much I love Camille. Camille really, I would not have been able to get through having the person I love dearly for 20 years, married to for 10, decline, develop dementia, become very sick, and die. I would not have been able to handle all of that on my own without Camille. Camille showed up for us when Al first started to realize he was losing it. Started to realize he didn't want to live anymore. Started to realize that we needed to find some way for him to end his suffering. Camille was there the whole time. She was there with us when he passed. She was with me after he passed. She helped with his memorial. And so I know what Camille brings. I know. And she's bringing it to the students. I mean, I see it. We saw it. It is fantastic how lucky the university and the students at the university are to have Camille. So, now I'll read my script. I'm delighted to present the first ever Robert Holgate Award in Querying Religion at USF to Lou Corrigan and Riley McPherson.
Can you guys come up here, actually?
Yeah, would you mind? I'd love it. I've got to tell you, we're looking at greatness. They are going to change the world. Hi, cutie pie.
Hey.
Hi, honey. Lou Corrigan and Riley McPherson. I'm passionate about supporting young people, particularly gender nonconforming, non-binary queer youth. It's an honor to be able to partner with Rabbi Camille and the Querying Religion program. I had initially planned to present this award to one student, but when we met with Lou and Riley and heard their presentations, I was so thoroughly impressed with both of them that I realized I could not choose between the two. So I decided to present the award to both of them, or decided to present the award to both of them. And I was so moved and it so spoke to my heart, I decided to double the award for both. So, amazing. I've got to say, I was so disheartened when we heard Lou do her presentation. I was shocked that students here at the university go hungry. They work hard, they study, they show up, but they don't have enough food. They go hungry, and it's not a good thing to be hungry when you're learning. So what impressed me the most is that both Stu and Riley, instead of thinking, we want somebody else to fix this, decided they were going to fix it themselves. So Lou started feeding people, feeding students, made it open for everybody. As Lou's professor, David Silver, who's here, David, are you here?
I think he's
Oh, he's in the overflow room,
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe.
Yeah, so as Lou's professor, David Silver, wrote in his letter of recommendation, he said, Lou is a lot, an environmental studies major with an urban study.
Lou is a lot.
Okay, focus, Robert. Lou is a lot. An environmental studies major with an urban study concentration with minor in urban agriculture and public service and community engagement. Lou is an outstanding student who makes classes better. They participate and listen to others. They analyze and critique. They critique and collaborate. They work hard, and then they work harder. That's you, honey bunny. So now we'll move to Riley. Riley, you're passionate and interested in becoming a therapist and using research and data to advocate for LGBTQI+ communities, particularly for non-binary and gender-conforming people. And after hearing, I'll go off script. After hearing Riley's presentation, I was shocked. I was blown away that there are not enough facilities for students on this university to be able to use a restroom in the same building they're in. That's crazy. There need to be restrooms accessible for all students. So Riley, like Lou, decided to do something about it. As my dear friend, who I love very much, Marcy Edelman, wrote about Riley, she wrote her recommendation. Marcy said, Riley understands from her own special experience how challenging it is for a non-binary person to live in an unaccepting and dangerous world. I believe that she has the determination, skills, and compassion to become an effective change agent for our community. Marcy's here with us. Talk about changing the world. So I am honored to be able to present you both with awards. I feel that you embody Al's energy, his passion for the LGBTQIA+. He probably wouldn't have used all those letters, but activism and his shared passion for access to plenty of good food. He loved his food. You are both an inspiration to me, and I want you to know that your work is making a difference in the world. Thank you both.
Thank you. MJ, can you get that photo out?
And thank you all for being here. I so appreciate it. And please support Camille's program. Thank you.
No, when we're done, then we'll tip for them. Before I introduce tonight's guests, let me say a minute about the objectives of the Queering Religion and Archiving LGBTQ Religious Elder Stories. For most of history, and still in many places, even here in San Francisco, being gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming has been deemed unnatural, immoral, and criminal. The Abrahamic faith traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are partially to blame. Religious teachers, preachers, and parishioners have cherry-picked biblical scriptural verses to create a false myth of God versus gay. But God versus gay isn't just a false dichotomy. It's a rebellion against the image of God itself. This is among the most pervasive and hurtful untruths in America and around the globe today, and people all across the ideological spectrum continue to believe it. Religious-based hatred for gays and lesbians, trans and gender nonconforming people is a historic injustice that continues to wreak emotional and spiritual havoc on people of all ages. Having worked in queer communities for nearly 4 decades, I've met thousands of people wounded by what they see as a conflict between religion and queer identity. It's unsurprising that many LGBTQ people have given up on religion. Religion gave up on them first. In the classroom, I hear the stories of our students who've been made to feel less than fully human. Young people who consider suicide as a means to escape the pain and shame which religious authorities, teachers, parents, texts, dogma, doctrines, politicians, priests, rabbis, imams spew, preach, legislate, and dictate in order to destroy our lives. Students tell me sometimes that if their parents were to find out that they are taking classes that honor queer elders, their financial support would be taken away. My course honoring our LGBTQ religious elders enables students to meet and learn queer history from those who made it, people including Sandra Marilyn and Joss Eldridge, Dr. Marcy Edelman, Bobby Becker, Rabbi Alan Bennett, Senator Mark Leno, Pam David, and so many others, including tonight's hero and social justice activist, Mike Shriver. To introduce Mike, please help me welcome John Cunningham, the Chief Executive Officer of the National AIDS Memorial Grove, which includes the 10-acre grove in the Golden Gate Park and the world's biggest and ever-growing community folk art project, the 54-ton AIDS Memorial Quilt. Our own USF sociologist, Dr. Joshua Gamson, eloquently describes the National AIDS Memorial Grove as the place that holds our stories, the place that helps build our collective memory. That's why we're here tonight, to build our collective memory. Please welcome John Cunningham.
I'm not as short as you, but we'll see if this works. Thank you so much for the kind introduction and for your leadership. I also want to thank both Pam David and Robert Holgate for their visionary support of this project, and I know that both Cheryl and Al are together looking down with great pride this evening. I would also like to acknowledge the first two lecturers who delivered their remarks last year, former State Senator Mark Leno and Marcy Edelman. Thank you. Before I introduce this year's Alvin Baum Jr. lecture, I would like to thank the University of San Francisco for leaning in and supporting the vision of the SWIG Jewish Studies and Social Justice program, as well as Rabbi Camille Schur-Angel and her powerful stepping into this space here at USF that shows her leadership and her courage to continue to move forward. Her leadership not only helps the students here at USF, but it helps the community which we all live in here in San Francisco and beyond. From this Jesuit institution, stories of the Jewish people and the persecution which they endured will live on. It is through excellent programs such as this one, where our shared humanity lies at the core of learning, that we can heal our society and we can build bridges of understanding for the future. I want to share my deepest gratitude to Robert Holgate for supporting this program and for the amazing young fellows that you just met. I had the deep honor to have spent time with both Al and Robert over the years. Al was not just a philanthropist, he was a mentor to so many in this community, myself included. I recall a dinner at Robert and Al's home in 2017, following the presidential election of 2016, where they gathered a group to discuss ideas and strategies to secure the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community in the face of incredible uncertainty. To quote Cleve Jones, "If we take it for granted, they'll take it away." That dinner speaks volumes to the power of this couple, and in this case, to a gay couple. The love that Al and Robert held for each other was wrapped in their shared and clear understanding of the responsibility to support causes through strategic philanthropic engagement. Today, Robert stands as a leader in our community with a focus on supporting the aging, young, and justice and equality to ensure we do not lose what those who've come before us have fought so hard and oftentimes lost their lives to gain. Thank you, Robert, for your visionary leadership. As has been shared, I have the privilege to lead the National AIDS Memorial, which includes the AIDS Memorial Grove, 10 acres just down the hill, and the 50-plus tons of the AIDS Memorial quilt. A memorial is about storytelling, and in our case, about making sure that lives cut short are forever remembered and that the lessons of the epidemic will inform and inspire future generations to take action and to root out injustice, stigma, racism, and othering. For these have been at the core of the AIDS crisis. We as an organization are so honored to have had 3 fellows from this university work with us over the last number of years, and another prospective fellow sitting in this room with us this evening that I will have the great honor of meeting in the Grove on Wednesday. I would also be remiss if I did not encourage students in this room to visit aidsmemorial.org and to learn about the Pedro Zamora Young Leader Scholarship Program and Fellowship and the Mary Bowman Arts and Activism Award and Fellowship. If you're in this room, you're probably eligible for the scholarship and or the fellowship. So I encourage you again. The Jewish faith holds dear this principle of storytelling to make sure that, as with the AIDS crisis, we will never forget. Tonight, we are so honored to have with us, let me get the, the 3rd annual Alvin Baum Jr. Lecture, a true leader in the fight for justice and equality, and a hero to so many, including myself. Mike began his academic journey at Notre Dame, studying to be a priest. For him, coming out at that time, it was clear that this track was not going to work. So he ended up in San Francisco in the early days of the AIDS crisis, and that forged his life's work. Mike is a founding member of ACT UP, AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, in San Francisco, has served as the San Francisco Health Commissioner, chaired the Ryan White Council. He was also the AIDS czar to Mayor Willie Brown, has served as the chair of the National AIDS Memorial, today serves on the board of the Castro Country Club, a clean and sober space in our community, and his spiritual journey has taken him from the seminary to becoming the incoming president of Shar Zahav, the LGBTQIA synagogue in San Francisco. Mike is also a long-term survivor of HIV/AIDS, a member of the recovery community, an example of strength and resilience. Mike's work over the decades has not just brought about change in policy. Mike's work has saved lives. Please help me in welcoming to the stage my friend and a true community leader, Michael D. Shriver.
I cannot do this with a coat on. I tried, for everyone who knows, I tried to look appropriate and better, much better. Thank you, John. And thank you to USF, to friends and family, and to my former students who are in the room. This is an honor that I'm not really sure I deserve, but be that as it may, I'm particularly indebted to Camille, to Rabbi Angel, who invited me into her amazing universe to be one of her teaching elders. I never thought I would say that phrase, teaching elder. That program and that experience have been a gift and a privilege. I firmly believe in the power of story. It's how we honor our past, it's how we ground our present, and it's how we shape our future. That program, the Queer Elder Program, has really given me a chance to work with students to get a look at my past, and it's been very healing. And so to my students, thank you. I'm indebted to you for that moment of healing. So 3 years ago, we lost a giant in the queer community and in the Jewish community. That was Al Baum. And as you've heard, Al was a philanthropist, a pioneer, a lawyer, a therapist, an amazing individual, but he was also someone I had the privilege of calling a friend. And it's easy to see Rabbi Angel and Robert and Pam created this lecture series in Al's honor. It's quite easy to see if you knew Al. I first met Al in the late 80s. I was introduced to Al by one of my heroes in the LGBTQ community, Jim Hormel. And Jim told me that Al was somebody important to meet. Al was funny, he was engaging, he was gruff. I'm trying to say curmudgeon in a nice way, but Al was Al. But he was also someone that wanted to do the best for his community. A tremendous amount of my time with Al was spent doing AIDS work, doing AIDS policy work. Countless lives were improved because of Al, period. He made a difference, and his absence is deeply, deeply felt. Al taught me the critical value of being perpetually dissatisfied, of never settling, of always seeking to improve. There's always more to be done, more to support, more to being responsible in your community. So before I jump into the lecture, I want to get a little biblical with everybody. So how many of you are familiar with the story of Jacob? Show of hands. Who knows the story of Jacob? Oh, pretty good. So if you're not aware, Jacob in the Bible, in Torah, is this very, very fascinating character. He cheated his twin brother out of his twin brother's birthright. And he famously had a dream where he had a ladder that went up to heaven that was just populated by angels. He's probably best known because he wrestled with an angel and was given a new name as a result of that struggle. So that's all you need to know about Jacob. So, twice in Jacob's story, we hear about him coming face to face with the divine, and that's where the title for this talk comes from. Panim el panim, that Jacob comes face to face with the divine. The first time is when he wrestles the angel. When he's done wrestling the angel, he says, I have seen a divine being face to face, yet my life has been preserved. The second time Jacob talks about coming face to face with the divine is when he meets with his brother Esau, the one who he stole the birthright from, who he thought was going to kill him, and they reconciled. And after they reconciled, Jacob then said, to see your face, Esau, is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me favorably. In both of these instances, Jacob expresses the same sense of wonder and awe and reverence and gratitude. And in both instances, Jacob unequivocally contends that he has seen the face of and been in the presence of the divine. But what meaning do we draw from Jacob's insistence that both encounters matter, that he came face to face with the divine? Why does this matter? Put a pin in that. We'll get to that in a minute. So, good evening. My name is Mike Shriver. I am, as John said, an alcoholic and an addict in recovery. I'm a gay man. I'm living with AIDS. And I have had a remarkably full life, and I love being alive. And as I said, I'm a firm believer in the power of story. So tonight I'm going to do a little 12-step based thing, what I was like, what happened, and what it's like now, just to sort of ground everything. But I promise we're going to get to the title of the essay by the end of this lecture. I promise we'll land the plane. So I'm the middle child of 5, second-generation American parents. My Irish Catholic grandparents fled Ireland 100 years ago. Every year of my educational life, preschool, kindergarten, grade school, high school, college, and grad school, was in a Catholic setting. In fact, in between graduating from Notre Dame and before I returned there for grad school and for my first year in the seminary, I taught in a Catholic school in West Oakland as part of the Holy Cross Associates. And if anyone's familiar with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, it's Notre Dame's version of the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. My Catholic upbringing has had a profound and indelible impact on my life and grounds the way in which I view the world and what I believe to be important. It's also partly responsible for my decision to convert to Judaism. We'll get there too. Well, here's the movie trailer about that. I'm in 5th grade. They put me in the library because I was smarter than the rest of my class. So I spent the entire year in the library reading, and I read Chaim Potok, the Jewish American author. And In the Beginning and The Chosen were books of his that made a huge impact on this 5th grader. And there was something about Talmudic scholarship and writing in the margins and having conversations across generations. And I went home that night that I read Chaim Potok, and I said to my mom, I want to be Jewish. She said, please wait until I die. And we'll get there. So while I was an undergrad at Notre Dame, I was a TA, I was a teaching assistant for our pre-med biology course. And at the close of every semester, the TAs in the bio lab would do a lecture on an emerging scientific issue. So this is 1983, 1984, and 1985. And as a TA, the class that I taught at the end of each of those semesters was on AIDS. It was the emerging scientific issue in 1983. So my first exposure to the AIDS epidemic was absolutely and purely academic. So when I was a senior in college at Notre Dame, I decided I did not want to go to medical school, and instead chose to do a year of volunteer work and did the Holy Cross Associate work. And I ended up being, and for my friends who know me, please don't laugh, but I was a I was a PE coach for all 8 grades. But I was also the creative writing instructor and the dean of discipline for the school for an all-black Catholic inner-city school over in West Oakland. That decision to do Holy Cross Associates was the first of several in my early 20s that would fundamentally change my life. And unbeknownst to me at the time, lay the foundation for my professional and my activist life. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So now it's October of 1985, and I'm the Dean of Discipline, which meant I could take students on field trips if I wanted to. And so in late October 1985, I take my 7th graders into the city, and we get off at the BART at Civic Center and come up the escalator, and we encounter the Arcades Vigil. And for folks in the room who don't know about the Arcades Vigil, it was one of the first acts of civil disobedience protesting the government's inactivity for AIDS. It was a group of gay and bisexual men who had AIDS and AIDS-related complex who chained themselves to the federal building in the Civic Center near the Bolivar statue. So I'm coming off the escalator with my 7th grade students, so it's sort of organized chaos, and we see the Arcades Vigil, and that is the clash of my existence. Like, here I am with my students, a closeted gay man, going to a protest at the federal building about El Salvador and walking by the Arcades Vigil. The men at the Arcades Vigil actually came out from where they were, came up and just created a line, and as my students walked by, applauded them. And that is just an indelible moment in my life, seeing these men with AIDS, none of whom survived, applauding my 7th graders for going to a protest about El Salvador. 8 years later, by the way, I will come to run that organization that helps support the creation of that vigil. So, finish my year of volunteer work, and then I go back to Notre Dame, and I go back for grad school and in the seminary. So I'm not sure that everyone in this room knows why October of 1986 was a watershed moment for a lot of us that were brought up Catholic. I think it's also one of the darkest moments in the Catholic Church's history. For those who are unaware, in October of 1986, somewhere around Halloween, the Vatican published its infamous pastoral letter on the pastoral care of homosexual persons from the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith. And in it, we are told, and I quote, although the particular inclination of the homosexual person is not a sin, it is more or less strong tendency ordered towards an intrinsic moral evil. And thus the inclination itself must be seen as an objective disorder. It is deplorable that homosexual persons have been and are object of violent malice in speech or in action. Such treatment deserves condemnation from the church's pastors wherever it occurs. But the letter goes on and says, but the proper reaction to crimes committed against homosexual persons should not be to claim that the homosexual condition is not disordered. Policy. I'm in the seminary and being read this by the head of my class. This is policy. And even though at this point I'm deep in the throes of my addiction, and I'm deeply closeted at the time, I knew in my soul that as a human being, like everybody else, that I deserved love, I deserved community, I did not deserve derision, disrespect, or condemnation. To be told that my inclination, my being, that I was ordered towards an intrinsic moral evil, and that I was neither good nor neutral, but disordered. That for me was the breaking point. But I would be a liar to say that the Catholic Church also had profound positive impacts on my life too. You know, I absolutely have this belief in the need and the power of community. It's something that I learned from my Catholic upbringing. And my responsibility to leave this planet in a far better place than how I found it also comes from my growing up. You know, and my idea about having to work to take care of the health and well-being of my community, all grounded in my upbringing. But at that moment, in October of '86, I realized I could no longer be part of an institution that devalued me, that at best pathologized me, and at worst, denied me my basic human dignity. So in 1987, if the Octobers are important, October of '85, the vigil, '86, Ratzinger letter, '87 was another pivotal time because that's when I got clean and sober. That's when I left the seminary. That's where I met my first boyfriend, and that's when I moved back to the Bay Area for good. So I was very happy for 1987. So now I'm living in San Francisco, and my partner's best friend says, you've got to come with me to this meeting, this ACT UP meeting. It just started meeting. You've got to come to it. And so I went. And as someone said earlier, ACT UP is an acronym. It stands for the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, a nonviolent, and I stress that, a nonviolent direct action group that tried to bring about an end to the AIDS epidemic. ACT UP changed my life. Changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. It wasn't just an outlet for my anger and rage at the manner in which the government was not treating the AIDS epidemic. It was also where I learned how to be an adult. It's where I learned how to be an out and happy and proud gay man. It's where I created my first and longest lasting family of choice, many of whom are in the room right now, or on Zoom. Because of ACT UP and because of that community that I forged, I learned how to channel my energies, into constructive, targeted action. Shutting down the Golden Gate Bridge, occupying the Immigration and Naturalization Service office. I think last we totaled was about 24 arrests. And at the time, it was, and I know I speak for several people who I'm looking at in this room right now, we did it because that was the only thing we could do in the midst of the plague. It was the only thing we could do was to take over Castro and Market, or occupy the INS office, or shut down the bridge. Or, as I did in October of '88, got arrested in full drag on the Golden Gate Bridge, handcuffing a banner to the bridge about a bad ballot initiative. So, yeah. I love the Golden Gate Bridge for a lot of reasons. Also, at this time, I'm 26 years old, I find out that I'm living with HIV. And I find out I'm HIV positive when there are no effective treatments at all. So, it was a very sobering period of time. And my friends can attest to this, but I chose work as my coping mechanism. I don't necessarily endorse this as perhaps the healthiest way for someone to sort of deal with their mortality, but it's what I did, it's what it was. I found my professional footing in the world of public policy and advocacy, and in a sense, I just extended my activism into my professional career. So sitting on the Golden Gate Bridge was, for me, the equivalent of sitting on the Ryan White Planning Council or being the mayor's aide czar. That really was part and parcel of why I'm here. So in the second greatest novel ever written, which is Ulysses by James Joyce, The Great Gatsby is the first, but in Ulysses, James Joyce writes, in the midst of death, we are in life. And so I tried to figure out how can I condense 20 years of my life into just bits and pieces. That's it. That in the midst of death, we were in life, that we are in life. So, running one of the national AIDS organizations, to being at the bedside of one of my best friends when he died, to being appointed the youngest health commissioner in the city, to going to DC to work at the National Association of People with AIDS, or, being at UCSF in the AIDS Research Policy Institute, or losing at least one friend every month for at least a decade. All of this was in the context of me when my HIV meds did not work for me. They did not work at all. All this is in the resurgence of my addiction, 2 incredibly difficult extended treatment regimens around hepatitis C that pretty much broke my body for a while, the loss of my partner, the loss of another partner, my AIDS diagnosis, losing my mother, my apartment burning down, and then finally getting sober again from a meth addiction that nearly killed me. There's 20 years sort of all meshed together, but literally, I mean, in the midst of death, some life. I should note that in 2006, so I've been taking HIV meds since 1990. In 2006, I was in New York and I got a phone call from my primary care doctor saying, finally we found a treatment regimen that worked. So in 2006, I finally got that news that I was in fact undetectable, and it was one of the most amazing gifts I've ever had in my life, undetectable. So a dear friend of mine at that time brought me out of retirement, and then I began my relationship with the National AIDS Memorial, and then Castor Country Club, and I can honestly say that those places have given me back my life. So I've given you all of it, right? So that's what it was like, and that's what happened. So now, well, hold on. So, okay, so my mom died in 2011, and I honored my pledge to my mom that I would not convert until after she died. And what I will say, because it's hard to explain the conversion process and sort of the justifications, but what I will say about the decision to convert and what compelled me, like what holds me in it, is the idea of orthopraxy. I love that word. So orthopraxy is a very big word that ultimately means that it's more important what you do than what you believe. That's orthopraxy. Think of it this way, and this, by the way, is a core tenet not just of my activism and my recovery, but also my Judaism. What I do, my action verbs, I mean, that's what matters. It's not important that I believe that people deserve health and well-being. It's what I do to make sure that people have health and well-being. That's what matters. That's orthopraxy. And so Judaism has given me a framework as a gay, atheist person with AIDS in recovery, and it's also given me a community of individuals who equally believe in the importance of orthopraxy, who believe in the importance of tikkun olam, of healing the world. And it's been the most comfortable thing I've done in my adult life, so I'm very happy about that. So, as a person with AIDS, so if anyone in the room has not met a person who's openly living with AIDS, well, hello. I've been living with HIV for more than 60% of my life. And HIV has been and remains the through line of my life, professionally, socially, within my family of choice. It's the soundtrack that plays in my mind. You know, it's HIV. It's the thing that really has been that just thread. And there are so many faces, dates, moments, experiences, and relationships that are never far away in my mind, just waiting to be replayed and relived. This is a really mixed blessing, though, to have a memory, and it's a very fragile treasure. There are times when, if I think and remember, it hurts. And it hurts so badly knowing that if I begin to even grieve, I don't know if I'll stop. And then there are times when I truly understand the Jewish expression that we say, well, may their memory be for a blessing. For me, to remember is to defy. It's to persevere. It's to hope. It's to heal. It's when I close my eyes and see my friends. I mean, that's when I'm buoyed, even just for a little while. I'm held and they're alive again, and a lot of times those moments are enough. But I miss my friends. I miss them. There's my friend John, who actually thought he could see angels, and Patrick, and Frankie, my mentor, and Andy, and my partner Glenn, and my big brother Chuck, and Carlin, and what I'd like to do now is I'd like to invite everybody to take a moment and just close your eyes and remember, recall, relive someone or someones that you've lost, and just hold on to that memory, that painful, beautiful, indelible moment of that person. Thank you. So, whether or not you believe the hype, the AIDS epidemic is far from over, even here in San Francisco. the city with perhaps the best response globally to the HIV epidemic, in the past, in the present, and in the future. But while here in San Francisco we recorded the lowest number of new HIV infections last year that we've ever seen, which is fantastic news, we continue to see the same community shouldering disproportionate numbers of new HIV infections. Continue. Persons experiencing homelessness, persons who inject drugs, including gay men, trans women, particularly trans women of color, and folks in the Latinx community. I want to say this fact really slow so it sinks in. Overall deaths due to drug overdose are now the second most common cause of death for people living with HIV in San Francisco, for the first time surpassing AIDS cancers. Overdose. I'll add that among cis and trans women, people who inject drugs, and Black and African American San Franciscans, accidents, which include overdoses, were the leading cause of death among people living with HIV in San Francisco from 2018 to 2021. HIV is the prism through which we continue to view the outcome of systemic and intersectional barriers that guarantee disparities in health outcomes for communities still experiencing HIV. It's crucial to note that the communities that are being hardest hit now are the same communities that were hard hit at the beginning of the epidemic. As long as nothing changes, nothing is going to change. And now currently, not just locally, but across the nation, we're reeling from the impact of yet another public health challenge, that of the opioid crisis. I contend, even more than the actual risk behaviors involved, I contend that what has propelled the AIDS epidemic in drug-using communities and what continues to be the Achilles heel of our response to the opioid and fentanyl crisis is our attitude towards and our treatment of drug users and drug user health and well-being. Ranging from casual disregard to outright vilification, the manner in which we have systematically stigmatized and dehumanized drug users has only exacerbated the very serious public health disaster that we're experiencing in those communities in our city. With the drug-using community, just as it was at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, no difference, stigma, othering, outright hostility, intentionally using the artificial shield of morality to justify and to excuse inaction, to excuse dereliction of duty. All of this has fueled a crisis and why it is so dire right now. Rather than support and employ myriad evidence-based interventions that we know work, that would help bring an end to the opioid crisis, we seem dead set on holding public health hostage to fear and prejudice and cruel disregard. So close your eyes again for a minute and call to mind your image of a drug user, and specifically an injection drug user. What image comes to your mind? Is it an image of an individual deserving of health and safety and dignity and agency? Or is it an image based in stereotypes and tropes? Who does that person look like? Or are you at a loss that you can't even put a face to this community? Does that person look like me? Because that person is me. That person was me. So I know you're all waiting for me to get to Martin Buber, so I'm going to get to the theologian Martin Buber right now and get it out of the way. Sorry, this is for any of the Martin Buber heads in the room. It's the Buber moment. So Martin Buber, the theologian, said, existence will remain meaningless for you if you yourself do not penetrate into it with active love. Everything is waiting to be hallowed by you. It is waiting to be disclosed and to be realized by you. For the sake of this, your beginning, God created the world. So I don't want to oversimplify Buber, but what he is saying in essence is that when we honor the agency of the other, no matter who that might be, and fight for the basic rights of that other, that's when we meet the face of the divine. That's when we have the divine embodied, real, present, panim el panim, face to face. When we fight for the rights of others, we meet the divine. That's pretty huge. So our work clearly is far from over. But in closing, I want to end with a quote from my favorite play of all time, Angels in America. I think I've seen it 16 times now. It's my claim. That's my Broadway queen claims, right? So so at the close of the play, the protagonist Pryor, in his soliloquy, when he's talking about people with AIDS, talking about himself, he says, "We are not going away. We won't die secret deaths anymore. We will be citizens." So my challenge to everybody here tonight is that you need to see that you have a role still to play to bringing about an end to the AIDS epidemic, and that we all have an ethical responsibility to act, to keep advocating for those communities who are still bearing disproportionate impact. The HIV epidemic will not be over until it's over for everyone. And the same holds true for the opioid crisis. We owe us the same degree of advocacy, the same dignity, the same agency. So in closing, to tie all this sprawl together and getting us back to Jacob, because I said I would, what does it mean to see the divine in another? My challenge is for you all to become Jacob. Be Jacob. Whether the epidemic be AIDS, or the opioid crisis, or the ravages of sexism, or homophobia, or transphobia, or classism, or racism, I challenge everybody in this room to be Jacob. To accept that the face of the divine is both in the person sitting next to you today, as well as the individual struggling with substance use disorder, as well as the individual in that encampment out on the street, and as well as the individual that is still living in communities that are hard hit by HIV. It means that we have to have an ethical responsibility to continue to fight for justice, to be Jacob, to fight for the rights of all to indeed be, as Pryor said, full citizens, deserving of health, well-being, dignity, and agency. To do anything else is unacceptable. So thank you very much for this honor, and I hope I did Al proud.
You did.
So we have time for a few questions, and I know at least one of your students, Carmen, is going to come up and give you a hug and a word of thanks. But before we get to that final celebratory hug, questions? Can I ask you to ask one?
Mike, it's not a question, it's for both you and John. Thank you both so much. That was phenomenal. And it was heartwarming and touching because you shared so much of yourself. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Any students have any questions? Any professors?
Well, I just want to say thank you for a great lecture today. My question is, same as you, I have a really Catholic mother, and it's really hard to get to these hard topics when it comes to acceptance. My grandma worked cooking and cleaning for priests, and my mom did the same thing. And I grew up thinking that, Catholic Church, was the shit. And also, the guy that I thought it was a mentor ended up being caught having a rape type of thing. So that kind of image went down for that person, at least for me. And whenever I try to question my mom about it, she kind of makes me feel like I'm grown for thinking bad of him. And that's the moment I'm conflicted, because yes, I grew up in a Catholic faith, and I feel like it did really good for me. I'm still conflicted about, like, I don't know how to see it anymore. So since you deal with a Catholic mom, how do I deal with mine?
So there's a great expression in can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
So that, oh, okay.
The people on the
Okay, so there's a I'm gonna do a little 12-step language. There's a great phrase in the rooms in recovery that say, take what you need and leave the rest. That became my mantra for how to deal with an incredibly Irish Catholic family. It became important for me at one point, you know, apart from the anger and the hurt and the rage, but also became important for me as an adult, the things that I learned growing up about who I was supposed to be. You know, gay was not one of them, you know. Nothing that I wanted to be as an adult was part of like the path that had been laid out in front of me. And it became really important for me, and I had a community around me that was doing the exact same thing, was saying, putting everything on the table and saying, what has value, what means something to us, and what doesn't. And one of the things that was really good for me when I finally made the break with the Catholic Church was that I had a group of friends that supported me no matter what, that cared no matter what, didn't care that I had or did not have a relationship with the Catholic Church. But I found the things that I longed for in sort of a spiritual setting, in a family that I built, in a community that I built. And so I think that's one of the gifts that being queer, in the period of time when I came out as being queer, that was one of the gifts that we've given the world is permission to create family of choice. Find people, find your tribe, find the collection of individuals that not just think like you, but will support you when you want to start thinking differently, when you want to start acting differently, when you want to risk. Because it's not easy being a young adult. It's not easy making those steps, particularly if you've got a mom or a grandmother. So like with you know, it was really difficult for me to say to my family, I'm not going to medical school. I know I'm a failure. I know I've let you all down. I'm not going to medical school. I'm going to do a year of volunteer work and teach. But I had community around me that actually said, there's value. You matter. So that would be my advice is I do not give any counseling advice on parental relationships at all, which is a good thing. But I would say find your tribe. Build your family of choice and lean on them heavily.
Raise your hand if you have a question, I'll bring you up to you. Okay, great. Remy, you have a big voice. I'll bring you up to you.
I'll stand for this. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
It's so good to see you again. I remember you from Camille's honoring our Rebels class, and I'm even more inspired hearing you speak in person than through a screen, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Some points that you touched on that really hit home in like a personal and an advocacy way for me are the ideas of the harm that have been caused from extreme and intense Catholic belief and addiction. And I mean, I don't really know what my question is other than what do you have to say in terms of, I guess, those kinds of defensive, almost self-righteous kind of stigmas there? How do you kind of address those even when you feel like you've done the work already? How do you keep pushing forward to unlearn these things and, you know, make a change?
Well, I also want to just sort of remark that as someone who grew up Irish Catholic, closeted, I'm standing in a Jesuit university talking about converting to Judaism and being an injection drug user in recovery and an out gay man. And so there's something really revolutionary about that I think, so I think I think one of the things that and I'm looking at one of my housemates about this, but there's something about living out loud that, in the face of stigma and in the face of those sort of strictures that really tell you you're not worth it, you're wrong. I would say the fuck word, but I'm not going to. But it's the way in which you live out loud to say that, like, my respect is not generated by institutions that do not believe that I should have agency or decency. I don't measure my value against places that don't want me. And so I think the idea about living out loud with people that live equally out loud as you is sort of a really good thing to do in the face of some pretty oppressive and heinous and brutal. I mean, it's no mystery that the opioid crisis in this city is going on unabated. The same language we're seeing right now in the press about fentanyl and about overdoses from opioid is the exact same language we heard in the late 80s when we tried to do needle exchange, when we were trying to curb the spread of HIV and injection drug users. Language doesn't change. They just seem to change the target of where they're going to fire all this rhetoric and bias and hatred. And it never ceases to amaze me that the lessons that we learned in the HIV epidemic should be so easy to put into place now around gender, around opioid, around class, and that we're still seeing those same languages, that same sort of oppressive, vile hatred that I think that living out loud and flipping the bird off to that is a really good thing to do.
Who else has a question?
Mason.
Three questions.
I can see.
Nate, you got such a big voice. Do you think this counts
Thank you, Mike, so much. I'm wondering, as storytellers, as a room full of people who embrace the power of story, I always or frequently wonder, within the story of the AIDS epidemic, what is one of the so-called subplots or less known stories that hasn't received enough light, that hasn't been told often enough, in your opinion? A story that just hasn't been given as much visibility that really is important for us all to know about. It doesn't have to be one, but maybe one up.
I think that wow. So one of the things that happened with my group of friends is as we all were part of ACT UP and all that stuff. But the number of individuals that I know that actually then went into social justice work, I think is not a story we tell a lot about the epidemic, but the system didn't just change because we protested it. And the system didn't change because we pushed on the CDC or federal agencies. The system changed because we had people who were working in that system who changed that system. We had women that became nurse practitioners. We had folks that ended up working in the health department and managing contracts and founding agencies. That part of the AIDS epidemic is that it didn't just change because someone said bad, but people actually made it their life purpose to actually get into that system and fix that system. And so, and a huge number of those people were AIDS activists, huge number of them. And at one point it was sort of the dirty word that you worked for the industry, that you were part of AIDS Inc. But I always wore that as a badge of honor because my job was to make that system work. And the system before we got to it was pretty horrific. So I think that sub-thread, that what individuals did to change the public health care infrastructure was pretty, we saw the benefits during COVID, but it was all done because of HIV. So.
That's so interesting because that's how I feel like as a rabbi. I had to get into the system to be able to change the system. I really, okay, there's Jeffrey, I see a student though. Hang on one second. Isn't there a student here? Yeah, okay. Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
And I am the proud lesbian daughter of a drug addict. Thanks. My mom is 15 years sober as of this January. and I was wondering if you could speak to what I could do as someone in her support system and what we could all do for the addicts that we support to help them own that identity and find pride in it.
Purposely only had 1 minute.
Just so you can exercise. So I remembered it, when I first got clean and sober in 1987, it was pretty quiet, like you didn't talk about being an addict in recovery. And there still is a lot of stigma about being in recovery, and because addiction is a relapsable disease, people don't always stay clean and sober all the time, and so a lot of moral judgments about failing. And so I think the first place to start creating a shift in that paradigm is to expect the same thing out of an addict as that you expect out of yourself, or that you expect out of your friend, that your expectations are right-sized and level. I mean, we're not superhuman because we're clean and sober. We're just as conflicted and messed up and stressed and everything else as everybody else. But what we don't always have are people like you who are willing to say, my mother's a badass. Like, that is a fundamental paradigm shift. So I would say keep doing that, keep supporting your mom, and actually helping to break down that idea about what does a drug addict look like? We come in all flavors, all sizes, and, so I think that other thing around addiction too is, and particularly here in the city, because the opioid crisis is so attached to homelessness and so attached to a lot of the issues around housing in this city, it is so easy to just take drug users, injection drug users, fentanyl users, and make them so other. They're the tents, they're the camps, they're the every bad word you can think of. I think it's incumbent upon us to actually actively challenge the tropes that we carry around with us about active users and what they deserve and whether or not they have agency. Even in the worst times of my addiction, I still had agency and I still deserved dignity. So I think you're in a pretty good place to actually start just broadening that tent a little bit, person by person, and that'll really help.
Carmen, will you join me up here? And
Could I
yes. Can I give you the mic?
Yes, I'd rather not have the mic.
Okay. Speak to the audience.
There was more than one act up. There was more than one act up. There was one that you said, Mr. Shriver, but there was another act up, wasn't there?
Yes,
And there was coronation,
yes.
and I remember it. But I want to say thank you for Mark Leno, for the leather community, because they stepped up to the plate. Because we were, I was living at 1086 Posted Poke, and a friend of mine, Richard Hills, his sister didn't want to deal with him. She was on the East Coast, and I took him in my apartment, and I had friends help me to right to his end of his death. And then I became a Shanti volunteer. There was practical and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
I was a practical support Shanti volunteer. And what I saw, people were crying, people were angry and crying. I had a friend named Al Bale. His lover was dying of AIDS, and he walked away from it because he couldn't handle it. And all I said in the bad reporter of people just dying, it's not just men, it was women too, and children. I don't want to say thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Mark Leno, thank you very much. And you too, Mr. Shriver, and you as well. All of you, every single one of you, every single one of you, because all of you have done, are doing, and will do, continue, it's kun olam.
Thank you.
I met you a while ago, and we've been keeping in touch.
so great to see you again. Oh, sorry.
There you go. Good job.
You taught me so much about life. You have this will for life that you taught me how to live again. And every time I feel down, I always think of you. And you're just such an amazing person. You're a mentor, you're my friend, you're everything. So thank you so much for being there for me all the time, for giving me laughs, for making me cry, for wearing your Miley Cyrus shirt today. I have so much love for you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening, and Mike, I think your clear-eyed optimism, one of the gifts that you've given me, I met you recently. It was really thanks to Paul Cohen, of blessed memory, who told me a little bit about you. You had almost become a Roman Catholic priest, and then I knew you could be my study partner for the Gospels, and that's how we've been meeting each other in Chavruta, learning the book of Matthew together, and that's the subject of another lecture. But you have impacted hundreds of students in the semesters that you've been here with us in this evening, and one of the gifts you'll have next week are the students are writing up insights from tonight's lecture as a thank you note to you. So thanks everyone for being here. See you next year.